In the heart of a waning dynasty, a princess named Berenice IV was born into a world of gold and marble. She was the daughter of Ptolemaic XII, the flute player, a king known more for his revelry than his rule. Her younger sister was the girl who would one day be legend, Cleopatra XIV. The kingdom they were to inherit, Ptolemaic Egypt, was a gilded cage, rich in history but shackled by debt. Rome, the burgeoning republic across the sea, cast a long and ominous shadow over the land of the pharaohs. Ptolemy XII's reign was deeply unpopular, a symphony of excess and poor governance. He taxed his people heavily, not for the good of Egypt, but to fill the coffers of Roman senators and generals. The king's subservience to Rome was a constant source of humiliation for the proud people of Alexandria. Whispers of rebellion grew louder in the city's winding alleys and bustling marketplaces. Final straw came when Ptolemy failed to prevent Rome's annexation of Cyprus, a sister kingdom. Fearing for his life and his throne, Ptolemy XII made a desperate choice. He would flee to Rome. He sought the very power that had undermined him, hoping to buy back his kingdom with borrowed gold and promises. With the king gone, a power vacuum emerged in the heart of the city. The Alexandrians, sightseeing the moment, acted swiftly and decisively. They declared the flute player deposed, his rule an unwelcome memory. In his place, they turned to his eldest daughter, a symbol of their hope for a new beginning. Berenice IV was proclaimed Queen of Egypt, her reign born from popular revolt. Initially, she did not rule alone, sharing the throne with a female relative, likely her sister Cleopatra VI Tryphena. The dual reign of two queens was an unusual but necessary step to stabilize the kingdom. However, the shared power was destined to be short-lived. Within a year, her co-ruling sister died under mysterious circumstances, leaving Berenice as the sole monarch. Now ruling alone, the young queen faced immense pressure to secure her position. Ptolemaic tradition and political reality demanded a male co-ruler, a king to rule alongside the queen. The court and the people expected her to marry, to provide a king for Egypt. Thus began a desperate and ill-fated search for a royal husband. Her advisors, seeking to maintain Ptolemaic bloodlines, looked to the remnants of the Seleucid dynasty. They found a candidate named Seleucus, a prince with a questionable reputation. He was brought to Alexandria to marry the queen and become king. The union was a disaster from the very beginning. The prince was coarse and ill-mannered, earning him the nickname Kybiosaktes, the fish salter. His boorish behavior was an insult to the queen and the sophisticated court of Alexandria. Berenice, a proud and powerful ruler, could not tolerate such a man as her equal. Her patience wore thin with each passing day of his oafish presence. A move of shocking decisiveness, she had her new husband strangled. The brief and unhappy marriage ended as quickly as it had begun. The throne was vacant again, and the need for a king remained. The search for a husband resumed, this time with more urgency. The next candidate was a man named Archelaus, a high priest and nobleman from Pontus. He claimed to be the son of the great king Mithridates XVI, a formidable enemy of Rome. This lineage, whether true or not, gave him an aura of strength and legitimacy. Berenice agreed to marry him, hoping he would be a more suitable partner and a strong ally. For a time, it seemed she had finally found a co-ruler worthy of her. Archelaus was popular with the army and seemed capable of defending Egypt. Together, they ruled a kingdom that was, for a brief moment, free from direct Roman interference. Berenice herself was a popular queen, Loved by the Alexandrians who had put her on the throne, she represented a return to native rule, a rejection of her father's failed policies. But across the Mediterranean, the deposed king was not idle. Ptolemy XII had spent years in Rome, lobbying and bribing his way back to power. He promised vast sums of money to the Roman general Aulus Gabinius in exchange for military support. Gabinius, the Roman governor of Syria, saw an opportunity for immense personal wealth and glory. Against the express orders of the Roman Senate, Gabinius agreed to restore Ptolemy to his throne. A formidable Roman army began its march from Syria towards the borders of Egypt. News of the approaching Roman force sent waves of panic through Alexandria. Queen Berenice and King Archelaus had to prepare for war. The Ptolemaic army, though sizable, was no match for the disciplined and battle-hardened Roman legions. Archelaus, despite his bravery, was outmaneuvered by the experienced Roman commanders. The decisive battle was fought near the Nile Delta. The Egyptian forces were crushed by the relentless Roman advance. King Archelaus was killed in the fighting, dying as a king defending his kingdom. With the army defeated and her husband dead, Berenice's reign was effectively over. The gates of Alexandria were open to the conquering Romans and the returning king. Ptolemy XII, o late, re-entered his capital, not as a beloved ruler, but as a conqueror backed by a foreign power. His first act was to secure his power and eliminate all threats. Queen Berenice IV, the daughter who had dared to rule in his stead, was captured. There would be no mercy for the usurper, even if she was his own child. In a final, brutal act of vengeance, Ptolemy XII ordered the execution of Berenice IV. The popular queen, who had reigned for 3 brief but eventful years, was put to death by her own father. Her death marked the grim restoration of a puppet king and the tightening of Rome's grip on Egypt. The stage was now set for her younger sister, Cleopatra, to navigate this treacherous world of power, love, and betrayal. The sun set on the brief reign of Berenice, a queen chosen by her people. Her story serves as a tragic prelude to the final chapter of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The flute player's return was not a victory, but a costly bargain with Rome. He had regained his throne but lost the respect of his kingdom forever. Gabinius and his Roman soldiers remained in Egypt, a constant, expensive reminder of the king's debt. The execution of Berenice sent a clear message to any who would defy the king or his Roman masters. The court of Alexandria, once a center of culture, became a place of fear and suspicion. Ptolemy XII's remaining children, including Cleopatra, learned a harsh lesson in survival. They understood that power was not given, but taken and held through ruthless means. Berenice's defiance, though ultimately crushed, had shown that the Ptolemaic hold was fragile. She had proven that the people of Alexandria still had a voice, however briefly it was heard. The memory of her popular reign would linger as a contrast to her father's tyranny. Archelaus, her second husband, was remembered as a brave man who died for Egypt. His short tenure as king had offered a glimpse of a stronger, more independent Egypt, but the death of Seleucus, the fish salter, became a dark footnote in the queen's story. His unsuitability highlighted the immense pressure Berenice faced in choosing a consort. The entire episode demonstrated the declining power of the Ptolemaic bloodline. Were forced to seek husbands from obscure and failing dynasties. Meanwhile, in Rome, the story of Gabinius's illegal war was a political scandal. He was eventually exiled for his corruption, but the damage to Egypt was done. The Roman presence in Alexandria became a permanent fixture. Ptolemy XII lived out his final years as a despised and indebted ruler. He was haunted by the ghost of the daughter he had murdered. Upon his death, he left the kingdom to his two remaining children, Cleopatra and her younger brother. He also, crucially, made the Roman people the executors of his will. This act legally bound Egypt even closer to the Roman Republic. Cleopatra inherited a kingdom that was independent in name only. She had witnessed her father's exile and her sister's rise and fall. Berenice's fate taught Cleopatra that popularity alone could not secure a throne. It taught her that the ultimate power lay not in Alexandria, but in Rome. She knew she would have to play the game of nations far more skillfully than her sister had. Berenice had defied Rome and been destroyed for it. Cleopatra would choose a different path. She would seduce and manipulate Rome. The usurpation was a pivotal moment, shaping the ambitions and strategies of the last Ptolemaic queen. The 3 years of Berenice's reign were a brief, fiery interlude in a dynasty's decline. She was a queen who embodied the will of her people against foreign influence. Her failure was not one of spirit, but of the overwhelming power of a rising empire. The marble halls of Alexandria had witnessed a daughter's rise and a father's revenge. This act of filicide was a dark omen for the future of the royal house. The flute player had his music again, but it played a funeral dirge for his own dynasty. The memory of the people's queen would not be so easily erased. Her story is a testament to the brutal politics of a Hellenistic world in its twilight. Berenice IV was more than just a footnote. She was a queen in her own right. She fought for the independence of her kingdom against impossible odds. Her name, though overshadowed by her sisters, deserves to be remembered. The usurpation was a bold gamble for autonomy. It was a statement that Egypt was not yet a mere province of Rome. The choice of Archelaus as king was a direct challenge to Roman authority. His connection to Mithridates, Rome's great enemy, was a calculated political move. The Roman Senate's prohibition of the invasion showed their reluctance for another costly war. Venus's personal greed ultimately sealed Berenice's fate. The battle itself was a tragic clash of old and new world orders. The discipline of the legions proved superior to the courage of the Ptolemaic soldiers. Ptolemy's return was a hollow victory, celebrated only by his Roman backers. The execution of a queen by her father shocked even the hardened Hellenistic world. It was a violation of both familial and divine law. Cleopatra, ever the observer, stored this knowledge for her own future reign. She learned that a ruler must be both loved and feared, but above all, cunning. Berenice's reign, though a failure, was a crucial lesson for her younger sister. The story of the usurpation is a dark jewel in the crown of Ptolemaic history. It reveals the complexities of power in a world caught between empires. The golden age of Alexandria was dimming, its light fading into memory. Berenice's struggle was one of the final, defiant sparks before the darkness fell. Her father's betrayal was absolute, a wound from which the dynasty would never recover. The weight of his crime would follow him to his grave. The people of Alexandria never forgave him for killing their chosen queen. Berenice's name became a whispered prayer for freedom. Her brief, 3-year reign was a story of what could have been. She stands in history as the sister who dared to rule. Her tragic end paved the way for a legend, but her own story is no less compelling. The echoes of her popular support would influence Cleopatra's own careful cultivation of public favor. The financial ruin brought by her father's return burdened Cleopatra's early reign. Berenice had tried to rule for Egyptians. Her father ruled for Romans. This fundamental conflict defined the final generation of Ptolemaic rule. The usurpation was not merely a palace coup. It was a nationalistic rebellion. Berenice's choice to marry Archelaus was an attempt to build a regional anti-Roman coalition. It was a geopolitical strategy that ultimately failed against Rome's might. The image of Ptolemy returning with legions was a powerful piece of propaganda for Rome. It showed all other client kings the price of disobedience. Berenice's execution was a brutal but effective tool of state terror. It solidified her father's control in the short term, but delegitimized his dynasty in the long term. Cleopatra learned that Roman generals, not senates, were the true arbiters of power. This insight would lead her directly to her fateful relationships with Caesar and Antony. The story of Berenice is a cautionary tale of a queen who was loved by her people, but lacked a foreign patron. In the end, the will of the Alexandrian people meant little against the swords of Roman legionaries. The usurpation and its bloody conclusion were a microcosm of the end of the Hellenistic age. A world of independent kingdoms was being absorbed by a single, insatiable power. Berenice IV's rebellion was a final, desperate gasp for the freedom that her ancestors had known.